once again, I wish thee a good afternoon, my beautiful babes and babies. I am, as you know, your resident active advocate, and you get a two for today because I missed yesterday because I was being a lazy butt, and I also wanted to write. So that was the thing. But, alright, so video number 2 for today is going to be about the Julian Chapter, which is a companion novel to the book Wonder, as previously discussed. So, Julian is among 3 children who are called upon by the principal of the school to escort August, the main character of Wonder, around this new school and to show him the ropes and basically be his buddy, for the first little while, at least. And Julian is, because of a phobia he has, automatically repulsed by the look of August's face. I don't know how many of you have seen the movie, but in the book, August's face is described as he has sort of an extended brow, and it sort of sinks down into his chin. So he more or less, like, one of his eyes is very small, and he more or less lacks an ear on that side as well. He can still hear out of both sides of his head, but the facial deformity is described as very extreme. Like, in August's own words, it's bad. Right. So, Julian has, because of movies he had seen as a child, a phobia of physical malformations, physical deformities. And he used to get recurring nightmares about people with deformities, coming after him. And once he sees August, it resurrects these old memories of these old nightmares, and he starts having them again. So, despite the fact that Julian is himself not exactly a bad person, he begins to bully August, and one of the things that he does, too, is leave notes in his locker telling him how much of a freak he is, and all these different things that he goes around saying. And he distances himself from August's friend group and refuses to allow August into his own friend group. And there are multiple incidents that lead up to Julian being disciplined by the school. Julian's parents are against the disciplinary action because they do say that this is not an inclusion school. It's a mainstream school. It's not, as they see it, while it is desegregated, it is not one of those schools where it's like, okay, you go here because you are disabled or have a disability. It's not an institutionalized school specifically for people with disabilities. And August's deformity, they see as not belonging in the mainstream. Hide this away from the sight of other people. In the previous video, in which I talked about Wonder, I discussed the idea of the monstrous gaze, and I've gone through this in a previous video, but the whole idea behind the monstrous gaze is that this person, because of the way they look, we are labeling them as a monster, as incapable of getting on in society with, quote, proper normal people, just based on what we see. Julian does not exactly get to know August as a person, but he's sort of put off by the fact that everyone seems to like him. A lot of what bothers me about August's story is that not only is he infantilized, as I mentioned in the last video, but he is also used as, and forgive my language, but he is also used as, quote, inspiration porn. That is the concept in disability studies, in which a person is seen as inspirational and as aspirational, not because of any inherent goodness that they necessarily possess, but because they are disabled, or have a disability, rather. That goes hand in hand with the wondrous gaze, that goes hand in hand with infantilization. And none of these narratives are necessarily good or evil. It depends on how they're played up. But I particularly dislike inspiration porn because being a person with multiple physical disabilities myself, I'm just gonna say this out loud. It is not my job to inspire you by way of my disability. It is my job to inspire you by way of being a halfway decent human being. So that is what I am here to do, if that hasn't already been made clear. I want to educate people about how broad the world can be, and in my view should be. But at the same time, I am not here to say you must include us, you must look up to us because of what our disabilities can teach you. That is not my job. That is not the job of anyone with a disability. Just wanted to get on my high horse and say that. Julian, though, all right, and content warning about this part because I am going to get onto the topic of eugenics, and I will also put a content warning in the description for this video. Julian speaks to his grand-mère, his grandmother, about what is going on between him and August and why he's so afraid. And his grand-mère says to him that when she was living in Europe and her village was being beset by the Nazis, she was protected by a boy who had a physical disability, and he kept her safe from the Nazis for quite an extended period of time. And eventually, that boy was taken away by the Nazis, and it is implied, at least, it's certainly implied that he is killed, but it's also implied that because he had a physical disability, the Nazis, content warning, could have used him for the sake of physical experimentation. This did happen in real life. Most often it was with people with intellectual disabilities, but it wasn't only Jewish people who were killed by the Nazis. I have addressed this in a previous video that somewhere in Europe, somewhere between 150,000 and 300,000 people with disabilities were murdered by the Nazis in their death camps. Why is there such a disparity between those two numbers? We're talking a disparity of 150,000 people. That is because records were not so strenuously kept about people with disabilities. We were considered not to matter. And so it was not really thought to matter how many of us died. And for as much as I don't want to leave that, and just let that sink in, I feel that it's necessary to say that Julian, upon hearing this story, does begin to sympathize more with August and to understand better why it is not right to persecute someone on the basis solely of what you see. Because it's not necessarily that this book is making a slippery slope argument, but the idea is that if you snap someone up and persecute them and murder them on the basis solely of what you see, then you are doing a huge disservice not only to society but to yourself, to your own soul, to your own mind, to your own heart. It's not right what happened with the Nazis and people with disabilities. I don't even have to say that out loud. People all know, or any sane person knows, not sane, sorry, that's the wrong word. Any reasonable human being knows that Nazi and pure evil are pretty much synonyms. Okay? I don't have to say that. You already know it. So basically, the lesson that Julian learns is not to judge people based solely on appearances and to get to know them on a personal level. Because, there have been instances in the past where that did not happen, and it was very, very much to the detriment of both society and the people who were persecuted. Gods only know who in the Holocaust who was murdered, who could have found the cure for cancer, who could have developed the cure for Alzheimer's, on and on and on. All these brains, all these people, all these souls that we lost, just because people could not look beyond bare appearances. All right? So I excuse myself for getting passionate about this topic. I think it deserves passion because if we do not analyze the mistakes that we have made in the past, we are going to repeat them. And I see a bit of that going on in the world now. And it is more than just disappointing, shall we say. And I personally would like to avoid that. So this is why I do what I do. For y'all. Not only for y'all, though, but for myself. All right, so that is my analysis of the Julian chapter, and I hope that it gave a little more nuance to that character with whom some of you may be familiar, but his story you may not be familiar with because I don't know how many of you have read the Julian chapter as opposed to Wonder. All right, so tomorrow I will be talking about, I think I know what book. Oddly enough, I think I actually know, but I can't quite remember, and I have a list. So I will consult with that list and see y'all tomorrow for another video analysis of another lovely book. Read, read, read. For the love of the gods, read, because we don't want to repeat mistakes over and over again. Thank you. Goodbye. Have a wonderful day. Mwah.